Hello everyone and welcome back to another video where today I want to take a look at an insider quote from the forums over at Gallifrey Base saying basically what it says in the title. According to this person, Bad Wolf and Russell T Davies will almost certainly not be returning post this 2026 Christmas special. But he does claim, as in Russell does claim, that the show will be continuing beyond him. He just doesn't know what form that's going to take. So we're going to read this, and I'm going to give you this guy's credentials. And then we're also going to take a bit of a look at the consolidated 28-day figures for War Between Land and Sea, because they reveal something kind of insane. So subscribe if you're new. We do regular Doctor Who content here on the channel. Feel free to subscribe, like if you enjoy, and let's dive right into it. So I know I mentioned Gallifrey Base, but I actually became aware of this first thanks to r/Doctor Who News doing two sort of posts from this one user that's claiming to be an insider saying production for the 2026 Christmas special will commence this spring at Bad Wolf Studios, brackets, production insider. That's something I think we could all guess. And then the second one is both David Tennant and Billie Piper are expected to return for the Christmas special, which will begin filming this spring at Bad Wolf Studios. Again, I think both of these have been speculated a fair amount and are fairly likely. So that's not really the interesting bit for me. Someone in the comments says, really hope this is the last gasp of this era of Doctor Who. If the show is to continue, it desperately needs fresh blood and new ideas. And then Powerful Glove responds, you might get your wish. Someone on Gallifrey Brace, who previously leaked a few things back in 2022, claimed last night that RTD and Bad Wolf are out after this, and that Davis knows the plan for things to continue, but isn't privy to what it entails. Sorry, is privy to the fact that it will continue, but doesn't know what it entails. Oh, interesting. I'll take a look later, thanks for the heads up. And then someone asks, oh, have you got a link to this post? And they have a link here, which I've clicked on, which takes us to the Gallifrey Base thread, where Mutter's Spiral says the following, and this was midnight today. So I very rarely post on here, only when I happen across a bit of insider info. So word reaches me that RTD is openly telling people in the industry that he has no idea what is happening with the show after the forthcoming special, that it will be back, the show will be back, but that he and Bad Wolf will definitely not be involved. Now, I understand he has been known to fib, but that's what he's telling people. Interesting. So this is what this person claims. Now, if you're wondering, theories, why should we take this random person on the Gallifrey Base forum seriously? Well, this is the same person who back in 2022, on April 15th, said the following. Just passing on a whisper I heard from a friend of a friend. They don't work directly on the show, but are involved in talent agency representation. They wouldn't give me a name, but tease the next Doctor is male and black, to be announced soon after Legends of the Sea Devils, apparently. I have no idea if this info is true, but they have no reason to make stuff up. Guess we'll see and know soon enough. And this went on to be absolutely spot on. I believe a month after this, also around May time, they announced Ncuti Gatwa as the next Doctor, who is, of course, a male black man. So this was, like, dead on. So this guy does have a track record of, like, knowing whispers and hearing things that do turn out to be correct. So, if we are to take this at face value, then Russell T Davies is telling people in the industry he is not involved with Doctor Who post this Christmas special, and neither is Bad Wolf, but he knows that the BBC has plans for it beyond them. This is all pretty interesting stuff. I mean, I have to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised if this is true, that Bad Wolf may also be leaving. I was kind of expecting maybe Russell to leave, but in all honesty, I was surprised to hear that maybe Bad Wolf would be as well. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of similar people in the production at Bad Wolf who were there in the first era, but that wouldn't necessarily have to be the case. Like, you know, the production company could still continue making Doctor Who without Russell or any of the creatives associated with this era of Doctor Who, if that makes sense. So it's interesting that, like, Bad Wolf would be out the door as well, whether that means that the BBC have potentially found a new production company to produce Doctor Who with. I doubt they're going to go back to doing it in-house. It just seems rather unlikely to me at this stage, given, like, you know, everything we know about the BBC at the moment. It seems to me like they need a partner to help them produce this, so that could imply that maybe there's someone else waiting in the wings to take over. And obviously, I know from my comments section that a lot of you are very, oh, Russell T Davies needs to go and all that sort of stuff. For me, while I did enjoy a lot of episodes of this era, I do get what people are saying when they say we need a new, fresh vision. And what I'm hoping this means is that it won't just be kind of a continuation of similar stuff that we've already had, i.e., personally, and I've said this a couple of times, I'm not huge on the idea of McTeague, just because I've never really loved many of his Doctor Who stories. I did enjoy War Between a good amount, but like, yeah, his Doctor Who stuff has never really hit for me, and the rumour that I think we've covered before is that RTD and co were pushing for McTeague to be the successor, but since, you know, Russell and Bad Wolf are now leaving, that leaves it basically entirely in the hands of the BBC, who are apparently, at least according to rumours, less keen on McTeague. I must stress, that's all rumours and stuff, but we've covered that in a previous video. And you can go check out that video if you haven't. But yeah, interesting stuff there, if true. One would hope we would find out something this year, if the show is going to continue without Davis and co, which he seems pretty confident that it will, if this rumour is to be believed. Again, I'm still rooting for Jack Thorne, personally. I'm still rooting for Jack Thorne. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't necessarily think that the company is necessarily the issue, to be honest. This is actually interesting as well. I hadn't spotted this, but in Russell T Davis's Instagram, he liked a comment from Tranter saying, "Love this, Russell. Now maybe you need to start thinking of leaving New York before the city collapses from the weight of excitement of your adventures plus meetings. What an epic trip. At Tranter Jane, I leave it in your hands." At Tranter Jane from Oliver Cole, the baton is yours now. Interesting. So this would imply that, like, Jane Tranter was maybe involved in the handover of Doctor Who going forwards. Because they have said as well here, obviously there was speculation whether this was just a holiday for Russell and co. And I said yesterday that it's interesting the timing that they're all out in New York around the time that there isn't a global distributor. And now, like Jane Tranter is saying, collapses from the weight of excitement of your adventures plus meetings. What an epic trip. And then two hearts obviously being the iconography used since kind of Bad Wolf took in to denote Doctor Who. Maybe that's a stretch, but it's interesting. It's interesting though, if Bad Wolf aren't involved, obviously Jane Tranter is like head of Bad Wolf, right? So is she just working on the transition? I don't know. Is she like an intermediary kind of person to kind of sort that out? Will she be moving along with the new company? I don't know. It seems unlikely, but yeah. In other news though, and this took me back by quite a bit, we have the 28-day viewing figures for The War Between the Land and the Sea, and they're quite astonishing. Ratings, The War Between the Land and the Sea, this is from @BackTheBBC over on Twitter. Episode 1, 6.1 million after 28 days, with episode 2 going on to 5.1 million. This is insanely good for a spin-off of Doctor Who. 6.1 million after 21 days, I will imagine the BBC are over the moon with that. Especially considering, as I've said repeatedly before on this channel, hype for this was not high, expectations for this were not high. There was a general kind of expectation that, you know, it's kind of just something that we had to get out of the way. But the fact that this is done well and, you know, whatever your thoughts are on the ending aside, was generally received pretty positively by, like, the wider public from what I saw. I imagine we'll leave the BBC with big grins on their faces. If I were them, I would be looking at this and saying, this is our future template for Doctor Who, i.e. serialised, more grounded stories that people can get on board with. That is what I think Doctor Who needs to be going forward. I think this proves it. It proves that there is a market out there for these kind of cool sci-fi ideas if you promote them properly and if you delve into them and stuff. I think there's clearly an audience for it. 6 million people overall watched the first episode of this, which is very good. And again, like I say, that's just in the UK. We still have no idea how it's coming out on Disney+. But yeah, incredibly strong stuff from War Between. And just to give you guys the comparison, 28-day viewing figures, from what I could find, were a little bit sparse. But from what I could see, here are some Season 1 ones. The highest 28-day figure for the entire Gatwa era outside of Christmas specials, I believe, was Space Babies with 5.6 million. So this is 500,000 more than Space Babies for season 1. And also, we can look at season 2, which was even harder to find 28-day figures for. However, I believe the highest number achieved in the 28 days by season 2 of Doctor Who is the Interstellar Song Contest with 4.09. So when you think that the opener of War Between did 2 million more numbers than the highest episode of season 2, that's significant. And I think it shows that, like I say, there's a market for it. It's interesting, obviously, that War Between wasn't necessarily connected to the Doctor Who brand, which there is a worry that that might have helped it, because it didn't maybe have an association that the general public were less favourable to in modern times. But listen, I think if Doctor Who took the right lessons from War Between, I'm not saying it needs to be an exact carbon copy and have, like, one monster, you know, for 6 weeks. That's not what I'm saying. But, like, making it more grounded, making it that more kind of, like, experimental thriller, you know, kind of sci-fi serialized thing, I think will do them well. And I think if a new production company is coming on board, which would imply a new vision, that's where I think they should be taking this. Because as well, from the BBC's perspective, it's cheaper to do that as well. Like, this will have costed a fraction, War Between will have costed a fraction of what the 2 Gatwa seasons did. So, from the BBC's perspective, it kind of just makes sense. Obviously, I have said before that the BBC, according to Reddit rumours, were expressing interest in making Doctor Who kind of a Sherlock-style miniseries thing of 3 to 4 episodes a year, which, whilst I wouldn't love, I've said before, does seem relatively feasible, and if it is all one connected story, at least then it'll give you some time to flesh those stories out. So, interesting stuff here, and I think a lot to reflect on, and I bunched these together just because I think it's kind of a sign of where we could be heading going forward. It's proof that, if nothing else, there's life in the old dog yet. No matter what people want to say about, like, Doctor Who and, you know, the fact that no one watches it anymore, there's clearly still an audience for this stuff. You know, they're clearly still willing to tune in, and if they're willing to tune in and willing to buy merchandise, then the BBC will continue to make it in some form. And yeah, I'm very curious to see if that rumour is true. Obviously, again, as I say, take everything as a rumour, but given the credentials of the guy who said it, you know, I'm fairly confident that that could be legitimate. So, whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you later.